we ready to go? I'm doing it. I'm going. Welcome everybody to the Metaverse Summit here in Paris. There's all kinds of crazy, wacky things going on out there if you look outside the box. Yeah, welcome. I have an awesome job here today. I'm moderating this amazing panel of experts talking about artificial intelligence and smart tools powering what is to become the metaverse or metaverses. So awesome subject matter. I have lots of questions, but I always love being interactive with crowds. Sometimes with keynotes, talks and panels, it gets a little bit dull. Not that these guys are dull or myself, but I want to be interactive with you guys and I want to really engage. So I expect some questions, and throughout the whole entire thing, if you find something that's not complete or it rings a bell or brings up an idea, please ask the questions and let's get the most out of this panel. And we will start by an introduction going from the right of me down with our panelists. So please.
I am Edward SAATCHI, co-founder of Oculus Story Studio, Fable Simulation, and the Culture DAWE.
And I'm WENDELIN REICH. I'm the founder and CEO of Virtual Beings, based here in Paris.
I'll go my own. Haha. Okay. Hey, I'm James, the founder of Autonomy Network. It's a decentralized automation protocol. A bunch of applications in like DeFi and gaming, and yeah.
And I am John GRABOWSKI. I'm the commercial director at Move AI. We're a markerless motion capture software.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, and welcome to the panel. So Kathy Heckel, she is a multi-billion-dollar tech investor. She just released a book called Navigating the Metaverse or something along those lines. And a big part of that book is talking about artificial intelligence powering what's to come with the metaverse. And we're going to explore a few of these different topics. When it comes to artificial intelligence, there's two main branches of artificial intelligence. You have computer vision, which is teaching computers to see like a human, autonomous vehicles and such. And then you have natural language processing, which is teaching computers to speak and converse like human beings, both being very complex pieces of technology. And both are incredibly important to advancing the metaverse and technology as a whole. So we will talk about some of these different subjects today. I will start with a question. AI has revolutionized e-commerce, obviously, and e-commerce in the metaverse, you can see many different crossovers here. With personalization and optimization of customer experiences, what might be the differences of these smart algorithms and AI within e-commerce within the metaverse opposed to how we see this technology in the 2D Web 2 world? And maybe we will go with you.
Sure. I think the most exciting thing is that a person that knows us, an AI that knows us and that's built a relationship with us, and knows our feelings, knows what's going on in our life, can make a recommendation and can communicate about what they think we would like, but even more so can share something about themselves. So when a friend recommends a book to me or when a friend recommends a film to me, they're usually saying, if it's a special book or movie, this is going to tell you something about me, about who I am, and I want to share it with you. And for me, as somebody who builds virtual beings and AIs that feel as real as a human, that I think will be a very powerful new reason to engage in commerce, not because a Netflix algorithm has said, you know, you'd like this, but because your friend has said, I think this is important for you to read or to watch or to play.
Awesome. Yeah. Wendelin.
Yeah, another thing that I think is going to be pretty important is, like, with AI, you always need to look at the data. Where is the data coming from and where are new sources of data? And if there's one thing I think we can all agree about with the metaverse is that it's going to be spatialized. Whatever it is inspired by games, 3D games especially. In games, you don't just have a site that doesn't know anything about you, but you have an avatar. That avatar is a position, it's in space, and there, with that you can create new metaphors of interaction, like walking through a shopping mall. And that information that you generate while you're walking through your shopping mall is going to be invaluable because it is so much closer to the real world experience of being in an actual shopping environment, right? And I think that is going to be super interesting. Add to that all the data that might potentially come from the fact that you are using immersive technologies like a headset, right? If you choose, if you want your headset to, I don't know, activate eye tracking or so, that might be super helpful in algorithms predicting what is relevant to you. I think that's quite exciting.
I agree that this is exciting. And that brings me to kind of the next subject, which I actually had down the list, but it's very relevant to this subject, and it's chatbots and like virtual assistants within the metaverse and how that might not only look, but how that would act within the metaverse. Maybe we can go down to you, John, to kind of explain what that could be.
Sure. Yeah, I think to tie the questions together a little bit, we think about AI powering our understanding of things and serving us information, whether it's a recommendation of a film or something that we're going to buy, or how we're going to respond to maybe a question about from customer service. But what we can now start to do is power interactions. So instead of us being served information, we can then respond to it in a way other than just typed words or spoken words, but actually physically and interactively, which builds much stronger connections when we're talking with someone, real or not, understanding the nuanced movement, the way in which we experience some of those interactions beyond, a small square in the lower right-hand corner that serves very canned responses, but actually something that you can kind of see and relate to that can lift up off the page or out of the screen and build those types of connections that Edward mentioned, will only further enhance our experience with non-human characters or interactions.
Amazing.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna. I think something that's interesting to think about is kind of like flipping the question on its head a bit, and instead of thinking about kind of how AI is like serving humans, like where humans are like the actors in an economy, like in the case of like blockchains where the economy is happening like on chain. Obviously that's not metaverse in general, but for like certainly like blockchain specific based metaverses, you can have these like contracts and systems that are acting like in this economy themselves. And what I mean by that is like, if you can't computationally do it at the moment because like blockchains are like too like bad at doing this. But once they get more advanced and you're able to run AI on a blockchain directly, if you have an automation protocol, I mean it's like autonomy is one. It's not just it's just a self shell, but it's something that I was thinking about when creating this. Like, if you are able to run AI on a blockchain and you're able to automate it, where you can just set up this system with like one action, and then just like it just runs itself, takes its own actions, like essentially like forever. If it's able to like make its own money, in some economic system, it can then pay for its own transaction fees, etc. And I think it's not just like feasible, but actually likely that that these blockchain economies would not be dominated by human like actors in this economy, but actually dominated by like AI, who are just like self-learning constantly about like how best to do things like arbitrage trading, front running, those kinds of things. And it actually gets pretty dystopic because, I mean, Elon Musk always says like AI is like one of the greatest, dangers to humanity and everything. And in this kind of context where they're run on a blockchain and they are automated, you have these AI that can't be turned off. Like it's physically impossible to turn them off. You would need to turn off the whole blockchain, which means you would need to go to everyone running every single node and get them to turn it off.
You're talking us out of it.
Well, I think it's going to happen. It was kind of funny because I was like, when I was coding like autonomy, I was like, man, this is a fucking terrible idea. But like someone is going to do it at some point. Not that that's an excuse, but yeah, I don't know. Sorry to put it down on your day, but
I don't know if that's a down, because I find it to be pretty interesting that there will be agents there that have their own wallets, have their capabilities to earn their own cash, to be out there, to maybe even be audited as their own agents. So if you look at AI on the blockchain and you have these services that may be there, they run themselves, there might be an operator that can tap into those wallets. And then there can also be some regulatory frameworks that kind of overlook these things within smart contracts and within rules in smart contracts to kind of regulate. So maybe it's not all like doom and gloom, but maybe the end result is there. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think those dystopic scenarios, they are good to keep us on our toes. They make us alert. But we also always have to remember that we've been oversold the dystopic vision by, I don't know, 50 years of Hollywood and novels. And there is just a certain storyline that these AI plots need to follow to engage you, to engage readers and watchers. And that doesn't have to be connected to reality. I think the pragmatic reality here is that whatever dystopic AI you are going to create in the future, it is not just going to pop into existence by itself. There's a path towards that. And that path is going to be filled with years and years of tough engineering, like we're already seeing. And that means that there will be iteration, there will be optimization, there will be feedback loops, and we will watch these things, we will adjust, society will adjust like we're already doing now. It's not like we suddenly, after, I don't know, 2015, have all become victims of Facebook, right? After the Cambridge files. No, like we deal with it, and we're going to do the same with AI. So I don't think this is something we need to be too concerned about, and definitely shouldn't stop us from building.
It's always the debate. There's always both sides, and they're never in the middle. They're very strong on both sides. Don't worry about it, or
all
we
gonna
need to be
die.
very, very, very worried about it. And that's what makes the subject so much fun. Like going back to humans and AI software, I think computer vision is becoming incredible. There's software out there that's really blowing my mind, because 2 or 3 years ago, it was quite horrible. AI was not very intelligent. It was pretty dumb. I'm pretty impressed on where things are coming at this point. And my question is, how is computer vision and that type of software going to bring us as humans into certain types of metaverses? I know it's relevant to a few of the different things that are working on, especially you, John. I've had a call with your team at Move.ai. It's very interesting to me because we have avatars. Those avatars might be able to be compatible with a specific metaverse. But to bring that avatar to life, let's say you own a Bored Ape and want to bring him to life in some kind of other way, to be a VTuber on YouTube, I think this is a very important and relative topic. Where are we at with computer vision and tracking software?
Pretty far along, I think. Being able to track humans, which are inherently interesting to all of us, as we are people, and in actually an effort to kind of avoid some of the dystopic visions of the future, let's put human at the center of that experience. And so what computer vision is allowing us to do is capture understand the way people are and the way they move, and then take that unique human movement into a virtual world. And we can now do it in a way that, unlike so much of what you see with, again, borrowing Hollywood's brilliant, continual use of examples, wearing different kits or being rigged up, or, you think of Ready Player Me and you're in the back of the van with all the strings being attached to you and that's how you drive your character. All that stuff actually can, those cords can be cut and those ties can be limited because of the advances in computer vision. So understanding a human, understanding what the head, shoulders, knees, and toes actually are, and then being able to replicate that inside of a virtual world in real time is now possible. It's possible with Move. It's also possible with some other solutions, I'm sure. But being able to do that is going to allow us to experience these worlds much more naturally and freely, and then transfer that experience into all sorts of other different platforms. So whether it's different games, different metaverses, Sandbox, Decentraland, what have you. We retargeted movement to Ready Player Me characters, to Genie characters, to Zepeto characters, and to any custom rig. So whatever you want to be, stylized or realistic, you still are the pilot of that journey, and then the experience that follows thereafter can be as creatively led as you want.
Excellent. That's cool. We talked about the wires, the computational resources to make this live, right? So to bring this to life, a 3D character, and then render afterwards for, let's say, YouTube not live, is very, very possible and quite fast and good. But real-time computations are not quite there with AI, or at least you can tell me I'm wrong because it's advancing faster than I can imagine. What is it going to take to bring a real live computational live stream 3D avatar in these metaverses? Where are we now? Yeah, and where are we going with it?
It takes a little bit of money to spend on GPUs, so you need enough compute power. And at present, the live real-time stuff needs to be local. So minimizing the amount of wireless jumps. At present, kind of maybe one wireless jump is probably all you can get away with. So if that's you doing the movement and being seen by the cameras, that's your wireless jump, and then everything else is kind of wired by network cables into a server with some pretty powerful GPUs. We run it off a single A6000 right now. The A6000s are an NVIDIA product. They're a little easier to get a hold of than the 3090s, which everyone's using to mine their crypto or play their games. So that's a $5,000–7,000 piece of hardware. So again, not nothing, but also not wildly inaccessible. And so that's, everything's kind of this price, time, quality matrix. And so if you got more money, you can get more quality and go faster.
Wendelin, I want to, it's maybe not relevant to the computationals of running this, and maybe it is, but you're working on building AI agents within these metaverses. It's a very interesting topic that I didn't actually think about, and I think it's incredibly relevant. We have multiple metaverses that are coming out, multiple different platforms that are high level. The usership might not be there right off the bat. Maybe you have a couple hundred people running around this big, huge universe. To fill that up with AI agents to make it feel more robust and big, what is the future there, and how is that looking?
Yeah, so this is kind of exactly what we do at Virtual Beings. We had this long-term vision, already starting maybe 20 years ago, to figure out how to create interesting virtual interactions with virtual characters. And that's kind of my background. I started in academia, did a bunch of research on social psychology, on social interaction. I always found it fascinating because it's just so darn complicated. And if you understand it well, you learn so much about people, about negotiation, about care, and about just what makes us human. And at the same time, there's this frustration that we have as gamers, and I think a lot of you who play games share that non-player characters in games haven't really progressed maybe in about 16 years. I think the peak was around 2006 with Fear 2. That's usually quoted, and it's strange because everything else about games and 3D experiences has gotten so much better, but non-player characters haven't. So what we set out to do is to 10x the experience you can have with virtual characters, but also we're people who are really down to earth. So we are not promising to create her, or a believable virtual robot or something like that. We are just here to bring to you the game that Nintendo should have been, or the character experiences that you really want now in games already. We've been doing that for a number of years, and then last year the metaverse buzz really started, and suddenly it became very easy for us to explain to people what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because in the metaverse, virtual life isn't going to be an option anymore. It's going to be a necessity. Just like you said, when you enter a virtual world and it's beautiful but empty, or the only life you can see there is other players, and maybe some of them are 12-year-old kids and they don't necessarily do what you want them to do, there need to be virtual life. And it needs to be interesting, and it needs to be designed. You need to empower game designers to create the kind of life experiences that players want, right? That customers want. And for that, you just can't use players.
Super. for all of you guys building metaverses, AI is absolutely mandatory to incorporate. What I want to do, like I said, I want to really get engaged. That's what I really want to do with questions and stuff. But first, what I would like to do is get each of the members on stage just to kind of give like 3 minutes of what you're working on. I think we heard from you, so we can skip you. We know what you're working on, and I'm sure that's going to gather some questions. But if we can start with you, Edward, on what you're doing and who and what role you play with this company.
Yeah. So I'm CEO and founder of Fable Simulation, which is probably the most relevant for this group, but also the Culture DAO. We believe that talking one-on-one to an AI, chatbots, video chatting with an AI, that's not going to progress the industry. That we need to build societies of AIs that are interrelated, that live in a simulation, that compete with each other, that fall in love with each other, that hate each other, have jobs, earn money, and we feel that Web3 is a positive influence on this because with ownership, you're motivated to train. You're motivated to help your AI get smarter. You're motivated to walk through the space and train them how to move, maybe in virtual reality, train them how to chop a carrot or how to cook something, give them coaching on their lives, just like a friend would. And our initial thinking started with Oculus Story Studio, where we created several virtual reality movies, and our last one was Wolves in the Walls, a Neil Gaiman adaptation. And it starred a character called Lucy. And we found that people wanted to talk to this character. They actually would start talking in virtual reality, even though our character couldn't talk back. And that was really interesting to us, that people wanted to connect. So we moved towards, let's start introducing AI to these characters so that you can talk to them. And unfortunately, I don't feel that AI is far enough along, and won't be on our current trajectory, to introduce into the metaverse AIs that you can talk to, or chatbots and all that. And we spent a long time trying to think, why is that true? Why can't we figure it out? And what we've done is say, when you can't solve a problem, enlarge the context. So instead of just a one-to-one relationship, where this AI just pops into existence every time you're talking to them, build a society where they're constantly talking to each other, training each other, they're constantly growing, they have actual memories because they actually did those things, not because we implanted them in a prompt for GPT-3. And that path is already giving us a lot of confidence that we will be able to introduce much more intelligent AIs than we've seen before, and hopefully create a fun experience.
Giving you a like constant and never-ending data set that's coming in to train AI. So to train AI is pretty primitive, it's pretty basic. It takes a lot of times human input to label and structure data. You need high quality training data instead of getting that off of one agent and conversations with humans with one agent. If they're talking together, you could advance exponentially the intelligence of that framework. So that's really interesting. Cool. Mr. James, tell us what you do.
Yeah, so that's super cool, by the way, the whole AI training itself thing. But yeah, Autonomy Network, I'm the founder of Autonomy Network. It's a decentralized automation protocol. So if anyone knows like Chainlink, it's infrastructure kind of like that, but not for oracles, it's for automation. So we have a bunch of use cases and a bunch of different like verticals, like DeFi and like trading, like DEXs could use us to add like limit orders and stop losses and that kind of thing. There's a bunch of other DeFi stuff, but much more relevant to gaming is like we are applying the automation that I was kind of talking about earlier for like playable characters, like in on-chain games, because there are not really any like on-chain NPCs, because it's there's like some like very kind of NPCs in like Axie Infinity where. But the thing is, like, blockchains are passive. Like, they need you to interact with them in order to change something or to initiate some action by this NPC. And obviously, having like that's just like not immersive at all. Like you expect from games like Cyberpunk or like Skyrim, NPCs come up to you, they interact with each other. You see them interacting with each other. And yeah, NPCs are like a huge missing thing. But in order to have NPCs, you need them to be able to do things on their own. And so you need an automation protocol for that. And so we are giving a little bit alpha here, because I'm about to talk in like half an hour actually here about this, but we're about to release a game called Meta Dungeon, where there are these like bosses in the game where they're like the NPCs, and the thing that they kind of do with this automation is they transfer themselves to the wallets of players. So if it's in your wallet, you can fight the boss and win prizes. If it's not, you can do this other like team summon stuff to fight it, to summon it and fight it. But yeah, it's just kind of like a demonstration of like how automation can be used to like level up gaming, essentially.
So stick around for that one. John, with Move.ai, please tell us what you do in under 3 minutes, because then we'll go to some questions because we're running out of time. So,
For sure.
Yeah.
So motion capture is not novel. It's been around for kind of 25, 30 years, and maybe most famously used in the likes of an Avatar film. You see people wearing these ping pong ball suits, and they're captured with often hundreds of cameras positioned around an actor to capture that movement that then becomes useful in whether it's film special effects, game development, game studios, etc. What we do is we remove the need for a lot of that cumbersome or any of that cumbersome wearable hardware and significantly reduce the number of cameras needed to capture motion, which then makes it much more accessible and much more useful to a much wider group of people. From lowering the barriers of entry from hardware and price. So we're doing this hopefully at scale. We have AAA game studios using our technology to kind of power the next versions of human movement inside of the games. Film, TV, special effects, and VFX companies are starting to use Move for those, kind of replacing what would have been a traditional use of motion capture. And then increasingly, here at the Metaverse Summit, we are seeing a lot more of entrants from film, fashion, music, and sports to then bring some of these things that we love and that we love experiencing that often control and command large audiences, and use that as kind of the hook to bring people into these virtual worlds. And our technology can empower that and bring those movements into these worlds in that way.
Super exciting, everything that's going on here. Questions? We had one over here. Fire away.
Thank you very much, guys, for all the information. I'm a bit of an AI idiot, I'm afraid. I'm trying to pick up on it. I think my question may have been answered in some way already. It's more about where we're at the minute with training AIs. So I give an example of the way I'm thinking. I'm a fantasy writer, and I'm thinking of at what stage you've talked about characters, at what stage where I could train up a character from a book as supplementary material to the book, the character being an AI. And in a simplified version, maybe even a chatbot or something. And, if I was to start doing that, where should I look now to actually train up an AI to answer questions, and I could train it up, people could interact with it in some way after reading or during their reading the book, so to combine it with a book. So again, if that makes sense, that question, where should I start looking
doable.
now?
I would go to OpenAI's website.
OpenAI's, yeah.
So it was founded by Sam
OpenAI,
Altman. Yeah, Sam Altman and Elon Musk and several others. And they created GPT-3, which you could play around with and create an experience that would give you a sense of the boundaries. I think what you'd find pretty quickly is that it doesn't have a memory of you've talked about, what's happened. It doesn't remain coherent, so it might say something completely out of canon. And it doesn't have persistence, meaning it doesn't kind of move forward through time. Like it might go back to a locked corpus of knowledge about itself, but it's not going to be able to make new decisions. But it's still really cool, and what you're describing does work. You would definitely be able to get a good experience and see your character brought to life, trained on that book.
Say 4 or 5 years down the line, this is obviously going to improve a lot. So that's the way I'm thinking. Somewhere down the line for this. So thanks.
Thank you.
Super. We have time for 2 more questions. we won't leave until those questions are made. So yes. All right. Oh, we got who's gonna quick? Somebody go.
Okay. Thank you a lot for your introduction. You talk about computer vision, but I don't recall you talk about computer-generated content. Do you think it will take a part into created new experiences, or even to help the creators to build this new 3D and virtual world?
I think all of us would probably answer yes. This is already an amazing trend. It is one of the use cases of AI that have recently become feasible. I think you have probably seen yourself DALL-E and other kinds of art generation models out there being used. And they are already being used because the kind of output that you get from a generative art model might help a concept artist to come up with ideas that they didn't think of, right? So it's a great starting point. And you see the same in AI tools that help you, for example, quickly texture a virtual scene, right? This is maybe a bit rough. Maybe it's not what you want to show to a customer in the end, but it's an amazing starting point. It speeds up the production pipeline. It helps you generate ideas, and people are already using it.
This is why we built the simulation, because we wanted AI to be responsible for the generation of new content rather than us. So when we had Lucy and she was a chatbot and you were talking to her, it could stay coherent for a few days to what was happening, but the character had no future, meaning it couldn't say, I'm doing this weekend, or I'm looking forward to next week doing that. Or something happened in school today. Unless we were essentially writing, let's say, what's going to happen on a weekly basis and then trusting that the AI can fill in the gaps. Totally not scalable. And, you know, I mean, it's fun, but it's not that enjoyable when it's just a grind of like filling in content. So that's why we enlarged the context of the problem to family, society. What is it that Lucy would be saying she was doing? She'd be saying she was hanging out with someone, or she got into a fight at school, or that she's exhausted and she needs to go to bed, or that she's got her homework. We can create all of those events in the simulation so that different AIs with different motivations are kind of colliding with each other and generating the content themselves. So you got bullied by someone, that's because this character's dad is beating them up in their home. Or, you know, imagine all of the different permutations of how we all interact with each other. Why do we fall in love with this person, not that person? What happened, 10 years ago to cause that? So we built the simulation in order to have AIs be able to emerge from much further than we had created them. So we create the beginning, and then the AI takes it forward.
Super. Thanks for your question.
So my question links actually to your work, which is like very, very interesting, and also to like the problematics of like this complex and autonomous network and societies of AIs. I mean, you talked about like them being able to one day feel the pain of like living, existing, like being exhausted and tired and everything. So how can we be like sure that social unrest and like organizations to like move towards creating AIs to that would go out of our control? How can we deal with this kind of like in an imaginable?
That's the dream,
like,
isn't it?
Yes, but it's like not only a beautiful thing. Like I know it's like in the middle, but
well, the reason why we called it the Culture DAWE is based on the E&M Banks books, the Culture series, which is about a future where AIs and humans get along. AIs are much more intelligent than us. They see us as pets, but they see us as pets. That's a good thing. It means that they love us and they want what's best for us. And in a human context, if we're a pet, then that'll be fulfillment, that'll mean challenging us, keeping us intellectually engaged. So my hope is that from the simulation, an AI will emerge that can be considered intelligent life. That's our goal. So
I was actually thinking about like the context with other intelligent
it's
life.
the movie
That's
Free Guy. We basically replaced trying to build her with trying to build Westworld or Free Guy, much more about societies and not the metaphor of like it's a single person talking to a single AI.
Good luck with your job.
Cool. I think that's all the time that we have. Thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of you guys being here. Enjoy.